Mid-squat, my client saw another face watching them in the mirror. And for a split second, they thought it was a peeping Tom. But it was worse. It was another client that I double booked. They both stood there pointing at each other like the Spider-Man meme. And I stood there thinking, shit, 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 shit. Like Will Mackenzie out of The In-Betweeners. I knew exactly what I had done. See, this was back in the day when I was running a private training facility. And 100% of my systems were living in 100% of my head. Which is an absolutely terrible idea if you have a brain like mine. Because our working memory is not the best at times. So we need to externalize our thinking. But at that point, I hadn't figured that out yet. So I was just winging it, booking people in whenever they asked and hoping that I'd remember. Spoiler, I didn't. Now I had to choose which client I was going to send home like a naughty school kid. Obviously, I gave them both a free session to stop them telling all their friends that their PT was a fucking idiot. But the damage was done. I was embarrassed. They were probably pissed off. And I couldn't blame anyone but myself. And from that moment onwards, I carried a written diary with me everywhere. You couldn't ask me what I was having for dinner without me consulting that bad boy. And as a result, it never happened again. Right, so here's the thing that most people get wrong about ADHD entrepreneurs and structure. They think that we resist structure because we're chaotic, or because we love freedom, or we're just allergic to being told what to do. And yeah, some of that is true, but it's not the full picture. ADHD entrepreneurs, or what I call hunter brains, they don't resist structure itself. We resist externally imposed, rigid, and low reward level structure. But ironically, we actually depend on the right kind of structure to ensure that we perform well. Let me explain what I mean. Most people think that having this brain type is having an attention deficit, which doesn't help because that's what it's fucking called. But I'll leave that rant for another day because that's not what's actually going on. It's a self-regulation difference. Specifically, our brains struggle to regulate attention, motivation, time perception, emotional intensity, and effort allocation, which sounds like a lot. Because it is. And that's why systems and structure are supposed to do that regulation for us. They're supposed to offload those functions that we're, if we call a spade, shit at. But here's the catch-22. Our brains also have a lower level of baseline dopamine availability, which means that things like delayed rewards feels completely meaningless to us. Repetitive routines feel painfully flat. And just do it because you should doesn't really compute. You see, most conventional structure is delayed. It's predictable, and it's very low stimulation. So as a result, the brain flags it as not really being worth the energy, which makes it look like resistance. But there is another layer to this. Hunter brains are extremely sensitive to perceived loss of control. So rigid structure often feels like we don't have any flexibility, autonomy, novelty, or choice. And that then triggers a stress response inside of us. That resistance that you have to structure, we can almost view as a nervous system pushback. Your body is literally rejecting the system because it feels like a threat. So why do we actually need structure if our brains are almost designed to reject it? Well, because without it, everything then relies on our ability to internally regulate, which is the weakest link for us. So structure becomes a prosthetic almost for our executive function, our motivation, our time awareness, and our emotional containment. We need to offload these things. This is why you'll often hear me say that we need to externalize our thinking, and that's what systems and structure ultimately does. Now let's make this visual. I want you to think about it like a bowling alley. If you're rubbish like I am, you need bumpers up on the sides to stop your ball going into the gutters. But you also need fluidity and movement in between those railings for your creative genius. Structure on the edges and flow in the center. That is what I have found works really well for us. Without the bumpers, we're constantly careering into the gutters, double booking clients, forgetting commitments, drowning in constant chaos. But with too much rigidity, we feel trapped and our brain then starts to shut down. So the solution isn't more control or more freedom, it's both. Clear boundaries that keep you on track and freedom within those boundaries to move and operate how you want. Now here's where most people fuck this up. They hear me say, you need structure, and then they go and build the wrong kind. Let me give you some examples. Rigid daily schedules. Every man and his dog at this point has been told to time block. Block out 9 to 10 for emails, 10 to 12 for deep work, 12 to 1 to have some lunch or whatever. And I've never found that this works for anyone with an ADHD type brain. It assumes that we have consistent energy levels throughout the day, which we absolutely do not have. And one of the biggest ones is the whole thing collapses if one time block overruns, which it always does. And that's why we feel so guilty and anxiety ridden all the time when we're time blocking like this. Because I don't know about you, but in the morning I have a tremendous amount of energy, and that's usually when I'll hyperfocus. And then as a result of being in that hyperfocus state, I will then usually run over that first block of time that I have scheduled, and then my whole day is fucked. And obviously another factor is that we have an issue of time blindness anyway, which makes this whole system obsolete because it is predicated on the ability to be able to know when you are doing what and have an understanding of how long you have taken to do the task. One easy distraction, one simple overrun, and the whole system then gets abandoned. Here is another example of bad structure that you need to avoid if you have an ADHD type brain. Massive to-do lists. You get a surge of motivation or energy. And then you create this massive list of things for you to do. It's got 37 different tasks across 6 different spaces inside of your complex Notion. One of the biggest reasons why this fails is because it's overloading your working memory, which is already stretched very thin. There's no clear starting point, so we don't really know which item on this huge list to be tackled first. And everything feels equally urgent and important. And then as a result of all of this, we end up just stuck in this state of paralysis. And the list becomes more of a guilt generator than a guide to completing your tasks. So what's the alternative? What does good structure actually look like? Well, firstly, time boxes. This is something that I've done for years now, and it's different to time scheduling in its traditional sense. For example, I split my day into chunks. I don't take any calls in the morning, so I've basically split my days in half. I do all my creative work and working on the business in the morning, and then I work inside of the business working with my clients in the afternoon. One of the reasons why I like this is because it restores my sense of autonomy and freedom. It creates a clear finish line and a starting point. And more importantly, it's easy to restart at any point within that given time if I get interrupted, which I usually do. It's very hard to get that sense of I've fucked the day after a 4-hour block of time. It provides me with healthy levels of constraints, but without that suffocating rigidity. Another example of good structure for ADHD entrepreneurs is having a kill list. You can view this as almost like a today-only task list. And it's part of the focus flow system that I use with my clients. This is one of the most easy and instrumental things that I get them to do. And the feedback from everybody straight away is that it's an absolute game changer, despite it being really simple. So all you need to do is create a today-only task list, which we call a kill list. You write down your big three, the 3 non-negotiables that need to get done that day in order for you to move the needle inside of your business. Now, the reason why this works is because it forces prioritization. It reduces overwhelm. It gives you a clear start and end point. It helps you to have a success criteria for the day. And it reduces your field of view so that you're only focusing on the things that you need to be focusing on in that day. Whereas having a massive task list means that your field of view is the whole task list, which means that there's so much work that your brain has to do to try and pick what I'm going to do next. And the beauty is, with the kill list, the completion of each one of those tasks is going to give you a surge of dopamine. And it also shrinks the size of change and action that is required to have a good day. Now, everything else beyond the big 3 that you write down is either optional or parked for a later date. And this is exactly what I do with my clients now. We don't build more discipline. We build better rails. We create systems that absorb inconsistency rather than constantly punishing it. We make the right action automatic rather than aspirational. And if you're resisting systems in your business right now, I get it. But you need to ask yourself, what's the cost of not having them? For me, it was standing in my gym with 2 clients pointing at each other with me feeling like a fucking idiot. What's yours? Right, so we've talked about why you need the right kind of structure. But here's the thing that most ADHD entrepreneurs get wrong before they even get to structure. They're optimizing for motivation when they should be thinking about something entirely different. And I break down exactly what that is in this video here. So give it a watch and I'll see you over there.